Okay, we're checking out Fire Pro Wrestling World today. It's available on the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, and it's also available through Steam on the PC. This is the latest entrant into the long-running wrestling series, and it's probably got the biggest promotional push. It's the first time I've ever heard of one of these games getting a big promotional push in the US. So it was really cool to check out because it's my first time playing one of these games that I've heard so much about. As that, I'm giving you my first-timer experience, and really not talking about things that you could download, but more what comes right out of the box. First off, I'm going to say for anybody who's interested in checking out this game, your mileage is going to vary a little bit because this is a game where you really have to learn. It's not quite as pick-up and playable as, say, the WWE games or even other little wrestling games that I've checked out before. But once you get over the learning curve, there is a nice little bit of gameplay to check into. There's a lot of different moves that you could perform at the ready position. You have your small, medium, and then your big attacks. Every wrestler has their signatures and finishers. One thing I've noticed, though, is that there really hasn't been so many moves as far as when an opponent is grounded. You typically have a striking attack and a submission. Now, granted, those can change depending on what part of the body you're at, but I've also noticed that there is a little bit of trickiness in executing them sometimes. I'll get to that in just a second. You also have moves from the turnbuckles and the corners, but again, maybe not quite as many as you would in, say, maybe Raw or SmackDown, or the WWE games. Now, what is a nice little positive I can say about these games is that there are lots of matches with a lot of steps, a lot of customization. There are last man standing matches, barbed wire death matches, cage matches, and you could have all sorts of multi-man matches, battle royals, three-way bouts. There's even MMA modes, and there's probably nothing more fun than doing a 10-man cage match. Yeah, eat that, Raw vs. SmackDown. Now, another thing that's kind of interesting is that there's a lot of stars from New Japan Pro Wrestling and other Japanese wrestling promotions. This is great for fans of those companies, but I'm particularly not familiar with them myself. So obviously I stuck with a lot of Kenny Omega. Now, I know you can download wrestlers, but for those who are just kind of picking this up and maybe not seeing anybody who they recognize, could be a little bit of a letdown, but also maybe perhaps the gameplay will cover up for that with them. One thing I've always heard about Fire Pro is the AI of wrestlers, and I have to admit that in the time I've played, I haven't really noticed much of that. I didn't notice big changes from one match to another. One thing that is here that's kind of cool is a nice little mission mode. The first few missions will serve as sort of a loose, or as I call it, weak tutorial. It does the basics in getting you to know some of the mechanics that you're gonna need to know, but I feel that they could explain so many more things, like the submission system, or even the striking battles. Those I've yet to kind of run into. New to the series is the Fighting Road. This was obviously much talked about, and it's probably a mode that many newer fans will gravitate to. Here you'll design your own custom wrestler. You'll assign their weight, height, skills, and you'll set out to be on their way to rise up through the ranks of becoming a young boy to becoming the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. This feels kind of like a clash a little bit of styles, because from what I understand, Fire Pro was supposed to be more of a match simulator than, say, a fighting game. This feels like almost trying to wedge in that fighting game aspect into that game. And I certainly do appreciate it because it is something I do prefer, but it just kind of seems a little off to me. Another thing about Fighting Road that I've noticed is that there is a lot of text. And I do mean a lot of text. At times it feels like the game is is one of those interactive novels you hear about. I get why they kind of had to do this. I mean, you have a game that primarily focuses on Japanese wrestling, and maybe you couldn't do voice acting, but I also feel there would have been a better approach, like maybe some mild cutscenes with the 2D sprites instead of just pictures and text. The pictures and text kind of take me out of the gameplay because it is kind of a jarring little switch. Now, as good as this game can be, there is also a few other problems. One are the loading screens. My goodness, can the loading screens be long. Seriously, just look at this, how long it takes. I could probably just talk over this for a while now, and it still won't load. No tricks, just the straight-up loading screen. Another problem I always find is that I can't seem to get the striking down correct. Doesn't matter where I stand, doesn't matter what attack I use, I just rarely, if ever, seem to be able to connect with the strike, and that's maybe not so bad with some of the other modes, but when you're in, say, the MMA mode, it just kind of takes away from it, because again, strikes would probably be a bigger part of that game play. I would be remiss if I also didn't happen to mention the fact that when I did try to edit something, the first time the game kind of froze up on me, so it was sort of, and this was right during the beginning of Fighting Road, so this kind of left me a once bitten, twice shy sort of player as far as it concerns those type of aspects. The biggest problem, my friend, no fire promoter mode. The mode which probably could have totally made this game a shining beacon onto the wrestling world. Unfortunately, it'll be DLC, and if I'm not mistaken, it'll also be paid DLC. And it won't come out for quite a while. So those are all detracting factors from an otherwise very interesting and playable game. I would say check this out if you are really, really interested in Japanese wrestling, or if you really need a break from the typical Raw and Smack, the typical WWE game. I'll give this a mild recommendation. Definitely worth the rental. And then you could kind of judge for yourself if you want to carry it on. If you want to carry it on and purchase the game in full. Well, till next time, ladies and gents. This has been Showster 23 saying, have a nice day.